Sometimes surrender isn't defeat. Sometimes surrender means making a choice. Sometimes it means giving up some measure of your control so you can acknowledge all the ways you depend on everyone and everything else around you. Sometimes surrender means getting your own self out of the way long enough to ask just what the world is doing. Sometimes surrender isn't defeat, but a choice in which you have enough agency to decenter yourself and acknowledge with gratitude every single thing that is quite beyond your control. Sometimes surrender is a choice. This is the last Sunday of what has turned out to be one of the richest spiritual themes we have played with here at River Road in a while. This supposed dichotomy between resistance and surrender, these two seeming opposites that perhaps need to make themselves known in every single one of our lives and in the life of our country. Pushing back enough to move the mountain that is in front of you, even if it is one grain of sand at a time, while also having the humility to acknowledge the sheer immensity of that mountain and the fact that you cannot now and never could and never will be able to move that mountain alone. Creating some aspect of what will be while also choosing to abide without anxiety in what actually is. Two sides of the contemporary struggle to bring about a more survivable world for all of us and for the animals and beings and creatures with whom we share this earth, the constant and worthy fight to claim some piece of ground for ourselves, and the other deeper spiritual practice of surrendering all that we cannot hold alone. This month we have been asking ourselves to reflect not on one of those ideas, but on both together, not just pushback, not just presence as if they are opposites, but to know how both of those realities dwell in our lives. What is the state of resistance in 2019, we asked last week. I posited that the state of the resistance right now, the state of resistance to oppressions near and far is strong, but in need of the kind of steady leadership that makes such resistance possible over the very long haul ahead. As a culture, we are resisting, sure enough, but we are also burning out. We are getting more cynical, we are becoming more disconnected, and so the trick in resisting is to sustain the resistance because the stakes are too high for us to burn bright and brief. So what of the other side of this coin? What of the state of surrender in 2019? And perhaps you might be asking, why, given everything we face, would surrender be an option if it is just a code word for inaction? Well, because maybe the choice to let go a little bit, the choice to stop posturing the illusion of one's own control, that choice maybe is exactly the action the world needs in the face of all the bloviating surety so often projected by leaders near and far. Because the state of surrender, the state of choosing to turn over some measure of control, the state of acknowledging one's dependence on larger forces than oneself, it is a difficult thing to come by among people in power these days. The state of surrender in 2019 is frankly pretty pathetic. As a culture, we have conditioned powerful people to put themselves at the center. And surrendering some of that power is not something we do all that well. In this highly individualistic age, so often we have been conditioned to walk around orienting ourselves at the center of our own universe. Plants, animals, water, and air are viewed from the lens of their own utility to us. For many powerful people, including, I might dare to say, the current occupant of the White House and a great lot of political leaders across the spectrum of identity and party, a great lot of leaders are merely viewing all the other people around them as contingencies, as barriers to the realization of whatever it is they themselves want, or buddies who pave the way for their own grand designs. In America today, the autonomy, the power, and the agency of every single thing that is not me is so easily discounted. And the assertion of individual rights and individual powers becomes paramount above any sense of what is good for the whole, or even the simple acknowledgement that the whole of which we are a part even exists in the first place. But it was not always so. It does not have to be so. This placing of ourselves at the center of our own individual universes is not written in stone. Other people, other creatures, and the planet itself don't have to be mere contingencies in our own individualistic aims. We can surrender enough of our individual real estate to move in this world as something larger than ourselves. And the truth is that we human beings have done it. Age after age, we have done it. The faithful surrender of the self at the center. It is enshrined in world religions across the ages. It is enshrined in the languages over time which human beings have used to describe both themselves and their surroundings. And I am reminded that in the language of the first peoples of Northern California, the Wintu, there is in fact no word in their whole language for left and right. In fact, unlike in American culture, the Wintu do not orient themselves at the center of their own small universes at all. They do not carry their rights and their lefts along with them, identifying mountains and their relative location based upon the location of yourself. Yes, they don't have right and they do not have left. They have only the cardinal directions. As Dorothy Lee wrote, when the Wintu goes upriver, the hills are to the west, the river to the east, and a mosquito bites him on the west arm. When he returns, the hills are still to the west, but when he scratches his mosquito bite, he scratches his east arm, which means that in the Wintu language and worldview, the whole wide world is not turning to bend itself to your relative position. The world stays put. It is you who move. The mountain is stable. You are contingent. The horizon stays the same. You shift direction. In this way, every single person who speaks such a language acknowledges that we are nothing apart from our surroundings. We are embedded in eternal things, and we are free to acknowledge this embeddedness, this dependency, or to resist it and put ourselves in the center of our own small universe all over again. Imagine a way of being that acknowledges we are not our own. Imagine surrendering our sense of control and entitlement so fully that the unchanging horizon holds us even when we cannot hold ourselves. Just this last week at a board meeting here at River Road, we were doing some work with Sabrina Sojourner, who is guiding this congregation through a series of conversations about how to talk about the very hardest things: race, gender, class, oppression, how to talk about these things without shutting each other down or disconnecting our own hearts from the room. She was doing this work with the members of our board, and at some point, Sabrina looked around at us and she said, "I want you to tell me one thing that you think you can do entirely by yourself." Climb a rope, I thought. I can climb a rope and I do not need anyone's help to do it. I can get to the top, I can get back to the bottom. I do not have to ask your permission, and I am not scared, so you need not comfort me. I kept those thoughts quietly to myself. As another beloved member of our board said, "Drive a car." "Drive a car," he said, to which Sabrina promptly responded, "Who built the road?" And I realized, who wove the rope? Who hung it there? And in fact, who sat there with me, teaching me how to climb a rope 25 times when I was afraid before I mustered the reserve to do it myself. Yes, what is it you think that you can do alone? And what is the next question behind the question? Surrendering the illusion of control over all things means letting go of the idea that we are carrying our rights and our lefts around with us. And it might just give us the capacity, the purpose, to keep doing what we are called to do, even when what we are called to do is frustrating and exacerbating and difficult. My colleague Doug Kraft tells a story that perhaps most of you will be familiar with. Stuck on a plane, the captain comes on the intercom. An update on the problem is what they always say, indicating essentially that the problem is still not solved. Everyone is behind schedule and the connecting flights are ticking steadily toward a state of impossibility. You have somewhere to be and things to do, and that update is helping you none at all. There is a choice, you might say. There is a choice in that moment and in many moments to fight that annoyance, to push it back, to claim mastery over your environment, or to acknowledge the state of tingling anxiety in every vein of your body so perhaps you can move on. In Doug's words, it was in that moment, when resisting the anxiety gave way to surrendering to it, that, quote, I remembered the crucial meditation lesson, resistance is futile. Fighting reality, wanting things to be different than they are, it is what is sometimes called schlock suffering. Life has its unavoidable discomforts, but it does not turn into anguish until we have the hubris to believe it should be different just because we want it to be different. Aversion to what is right in front of us is like an ocean wave rolling toward us. We can try to run from it, but it's likely to catch us from behind, sweep us away, and knock us flat. Sitting on the plane, he learned that again for the 1,000th time. Old habits are conditioned. Learning over and over and over again to relax into what is becomes a deeper habit that might hold us and get us through. This, of course, is not breaking news, the power of such surrender. Other wise people have proclaimed it. Buddhist teacher Eckhart Tolle has even said that looking for peace, demanding peace, seeking after a state of perfect non-anxiety to your surroundings is itself a kind of self-centeredness that doesn't serve you in the long run. Don't look for peace, he said. Don't look for any other state than the one you are in now. Otherwise, you will set up an unconscious conflict, an inner resistance. Forgive yourself right now for not being at peace. The moment you completely accept your state of non-peacefulness, your non-peacefulness may just transmute itself into peace. Anything you accept fully will get you there. That is the miracle of surrender. Now, I am personally not quite ready to jump all the way onto the train declaring that resistance is futile. There is too much in this world that we need to resist. And I am not altogether ready from a purely spiritual perspective to just go ahead and submit myself to the reality of what is so completely broken that I am called to try to shape it into something more whole. I am a little too nervous and a little too busy for all that. But I am moved by all I cannot see, all I cannot control and cannot navigate by myself. And even when the problem in front of me is not solved, and the work of building justice stretches out across a frustratingly fixed horizon in front of me, I am grateful. Grateful that I am not, in fact, at the center of the universe. Grateful that I am part of a theological tradition which holds that we are embedded in and dependent on a context so much bigger than ourselves. Because in our theological framework, it is not just God we have to thank for everything beautiful in this world. It is our ancestors and the plants and the trees that fed them, the sun that shone on them, the air they breathed, the whole holy mess that coalesces to make the beautiful things that sustain us. We are utterly dependent upon the forces of this world that shape and sustain us. We are surrendered to the world, not masters of it, but participants in it, shaped by our surroundings far more than we could individually shape them through the sheer resistance of our will. A person who has surrendered the illusion of control is a person who has to live in some measure of gratitude for everything that creates the life you love. If we are surrendered to the world, we are grateful for the world. And if we are grateful for something, we cannot destroy it. We are creators of the future when we resist the tyranny of our age. And we are the practitioners of a holy surrender when we acknowledge that we are created by that larger system. The state of the resistance, my friends, is strong. And perhaps it can only stay that way if we are brave enough and grateful enough to stop carrying our lefts and our rights around with us and to surrender to the cardinal directions as we move and the earth retains its blessed position.